Thank you.
All right. Other members' questions? It's just information. Hey, I appreciate what all of you do. Your role is just going to get more important as Texas grow, but over this next session, you're going to have different roles. Your produced water conversation is real. We're long ways into that process and have a lot of different things going on in that arena. So I appreciate your forethought and looking forward to that because you'll need those people. Before I get to the next panel, I do want to recognize LightGov. Amy, raise your hand so people see you. She's in the LightGov office, Amy Lopez. I do have the governor's folks, Morgan Johnson, Ben Heggood. There you go. So that is all that is in water that you guys need to know about. And you probably knew that anyway, but didn't want to let them go unnoticed. So thank you for being here. Chair calls up Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board and PUC.
Probably so.
All right. Let's start with Texas Soil and Conservation Board.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members, and staff. I'm David Basinger, Chairman of the Texas Soil and Water Conservation Board. With me are Executive Director Rex Isom and Program Director John Foster. On behalf of the Texas Soil and Water Conservation Board, Board of Directors, and District Directors, I sincerely thank you for your dedication and commitment to serving the people of Texas. It is my pleasure to turn the presentation of our agency update over to Mr. Isom, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Chairman Basinger. I appreciate you and all the help that the State Board provides to the staff. And thank you, Chairman Perry and members of the committee for your leadership in all water issues. Now, I do ditto Chairman Perry what Chairwoman Popp just said. So I know how many years you've been diligent in water issues and just thank you for that. I am Rex Isom. I serve as Executive Director of the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board. I do thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview, and it will be brief, of our programs that we operate throughout the great state of Texas. The State Board was established in 1939 to address the dire need of innovative conservation programs to protect our natural resources after the devastating Dust Bowl. The agency is governed by a 7-member board, all of which are actively involved in production agriculture or silviculture. 5 of the board members are locally elected by their peers. 2 board members are appointed by the governor. The State Board is the lead agency for planning, implementing, and managing natural resource conservation programs which strive to prevent and abate agricultural and silvicultural non-point sources of water pollution. Additionally, the State Board works to ensure that the state's 2,038 flood control dam structures are in good repair to protect lives, property, and infrastructure by providing operation, maintenance, and structural repair grants to the local government sponsors. The State Board has a unique and efficient delivery system of very important, of voluntary conservation programs throughout our great state. The board is administratively tied to 216 local soil and water conservation districts, which are political subdivisions of state government. The 216 soil and water conservation districts are led by 1,080 locally elected district directors. The State Board is truly an example of locally led, voluntary conservation delivery system which assists with actual implementation of best management practices throughout the entire state. The State Board has the trust of our local producers all across the various sectors of agricultural production. The State Board's mission is to work in conjunction with the local soil and water conservation districts to encourage the wise and productive use of our natural resources. The agency is headquartered in Temple, and we have 6 regional offices and 2 program offices located throughout the state. These offices are in Dublin, Health Center, Harlingen, Mount Pleasant, San Angelo, Wharton, and Nacogdoches. In closing, as the population continues to increase, which has been referred to earlier, maintaining the viability of our natural resources becomes more and more vital for our great state. At this point, I'll ask John Foster, our programs officer, to briefly address each program, and then we'll be glad to stay as long as you want to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members and staff. I'm John Foster, Programs Officer for the State Soil and Water Conservation Board. Just to fill in a few gaps from the introduction that Rex provided, for fiscal year 2025, the agency's indirect administrative rate is budgeted at 1.5%. Direct administration of agency programs is another 10%. 88.5% of all appropriated funds are passed through to end users. The agency is responsible for administering a number of state programs that all fall into either local soil and water conservation district operations support, water quality as it interrelates to agriculture and forestry, flood control dam maintenance and repair, and control of Carrizo cane along the international border with Mexico. Additionally, the agency coordinates the activities of the Texas Invasive Species Coordinating Committee and participates in a variety of planning groups related to flooding, water planning, and habitat mitigation. The State Board is an implementation agency, meaning our role is to assist farmers, ranchers, and other open space landowners in compelling a change on the ground through the installation of conservation practices, all in coordination with the appropriate soil and water conservation district. In fact, the newest program currently administered by the agency is called the On the Ground Conservation Program, which focuses on even other resource concerns such as soil health, carbon management, soil erosion, and improving resiliency to natural disasters. The agency administers a number of conservation-related grant programs for local districts, which are their primary source of funding because they are not taxing entities. With these funds, local districts employ conservation planners and direct conservation assistance funds from multiple sources toward producers in their jurisdiction. One of the agency's main primary responsibilities is being the state's lead agency for the voluntary abatement, management, and prevention of non-point source pollution or runoff from agricultural sources that aren't permitted by TCEQ. To accomplish the goals of that directive, the State Board administers a farm-scale water quality management plan certification program for producers. On a larger scale, the agency also coordinates closely with TCEQ on watershed or regional scale projects to address impaired waters through total maximum daily loads and watershed protection plans. And we also implement the Clean Water Act Section 319H grant that we received from EPA and split the funding with TCEQ. The State Board's newest program, the On the Ground Conservation Program mentioned earlier, has been successful in facilitating the acquisition of a number of federal grants, which was its intent. Its initial shot out of the gate has been the acquisition of approximately a $40 million grant of USDA funds through Texas AgriLife Research to the State Board for producers as incentives to implement climate-smart conservation practices across the state. Another part of that program, the Feral Swine Loan Trap Program. We have assisted landowners through the use of feral swine traps in trapping and dispatching 7,000 swine by landowners, which is a little different than if you send out wildlife services. And they have very large numbers, but in these cases, these are landowners doing it themselves. The Carrizo cane eradication program has been in place since 2015. It's essentially the agency working through contractors to control cane stands along the border to improve the safety of the working environment for law enforcement personnel. Last session, Representative Hayes authored House Bill 2568, which directed the agency to determine the amount and location of cane along the border. The agency asked one of our existing contractors to conduct the study, the results of which do provide the extent and location of the cane on the border. Obviously, this information will result in discussions on timing and funding amounts to address it, and we're ready to have those discussions. The last major program administered by the agency is the Flood Control Dam Program, which is separated into 2 kinds of grants, operation and maintenance, as well as major repair activities. Additionally, the repair portion of the program is where the federal funds that are available through USDA for rehabilitation are used to match the state funding that the legislature provides. Texas relies on 2,038 flood control dams to protect the lives, property scattered across the state. These privately located earthen dams provide over $600 million in annual benefits. Having been built by the USDA NRCS, the local government entities are the responsible parties for future upkeep and repairs. This program was examined very closely during the agency's most recent Sunset Commission review. As of today, and reflected in the SAO's and Sunset Commission's most recent reports on implementation progress, the State Board has fully implemented the Sunset Commission's directives improving accountability, transparency, and efficiency. Aging infrastructure and urban expansion increase the need for repair. Currently, 752 dams are classified as high hazard, meaning failure could result in the loss of life. Agency staff estimates a total population at risk of 94,000. Aside from the documented O&M and repair needs, there are approximately 607 out of the 2,038 structures that were not constructed to high hazard design criteria because at the time they were low hazard and out in the country doing their job in anonymity. Today they are surrounded by development, so they have been classified as high hazard by the Dam Safety Program at TCEQ, and every time they do that, our target number increases. We estimate that addressing this problem completely would cost in the neighborhood of $3.8 billion. The State Board was able to apply $150 million to that backlog 2 sessions ago, with that appropriation resulting in 13 completed upgrades or rehabilitations, 7 still underway, scheduled to be completed this summer, and 31 completed repairs. With all that in mind, the State Board's pending legislative appropriation request includes a request for another $150 million to essentially conduct more of the same operations and address the backlog further. Additionally, the board is requesting an additional FTE for a dam safety engineer in the field to assist dam sponsors with program elements and decision-making prior to engaging our grant programs. Both of those requests were made with the support of the Texas Association of Watershed Sponsors, which is the primary constituency for this program. And that completes the agency's prepared remarks on its current activities and budget request.
Members, any questions? I just make a couple of comments. One, soil is probably one of the biggest challenges our producers face because of soil erosion and the quality of that soil. Y'all got a lot of initiatives to help local producers work through that. Cane process for anybody that's been on the border and seen what it looks like when there's not a cane eradication program. Your visibility and your ability to move through there is zero. You don't walk. So it's highly effective, and it really does provide clarity when you're looking for the bad guys or when the bad guys are trying to find you. It really does open up that space. So very effective, or hide, true. I guess what I'd say, it's a force multiplier, and it also helps us do our job down there. And then, members, the dam conversation is an interesting one for me. I think I was one of the first that kind of raised the issue of 2,000 dams that we're responsible for around the state. But there's multiple classes of dams and different people responsible for each dam. So when you go down the dam conversation, you need to make sure you're talking with the right dams in mind, because it's really kind of gets convoluted. At the end of the days, these guys manage a lot of dams you would never know exist. And when we have major flood events, because you're there, you've mitigated a lot of problems. But those dams are our responsibility as a state that the Corps of Engineers gave to us back in the 40s and 50s, generally speaking. It said, we built them, you take care of them. And as always, people moving into different areas has created a problem. Secondly, we prioritize our funding, and very few people even know these exist. So you're in a better place than you have been in the past, but at the same time, it's still an education hurdle. So, but thank you for what you do. Members, you got any? Go ahead, Rex.
I did just one comment on the dams. You may not know that they exist. You might look around and above where you live, because probably these structures are protecting your homes. And then if you'll pay close attention to the ever-expanding and growing numbers of responsibility and liability for the state, $150 million is the ask, but it's a small drop in the bucket.
And it
to the
is a
overall
federal
problem.
match. I remember looking at this. $2.1 billion was when the last time I looked at for a 10-year plan to kind of work through it. If you would, I know this has been helpful in the past. I didn't see it in here specifically. You could identify by member, kind of who's in there, what's in there.
That you will have that tomorrow at Senate Finance.
Okay. It's a good piece of information, because I remember the last time, I think Senator Nelson had the most in her district. I know Senator Swertner had a good chunk of them, but I think a lot of those got cleared up in Senator Nelson as chair of finance. I don't know how that happened, but I think they did deplete a little bit. But it's just one of those things that you got to take care of, but it's not glamorous. And you do have a bunch of Manila, so appreciate what you guys do. Thank you for being.
Thank you.
Hey, Chairman,
Yes, I'm sorry.
that's right. I'm fairly confident that I'm not at risk out in Midland, but I did appreciate the comment about how as population continues to grow, that these dams that were once rural have now become a larger risk to population, and so I appreciate that comment.
Thank you.
Just so you guys know, this year I've got this handy little machine that I've never had before. So if you push your button, it lines up here. I'm not having to look down there. So if you want to talk, use your button. If you don't, you're not going to get to talk. It's just that simple. So, all right. Thank you guys for being here. See y'all tomorrow. Are you the PUC? Oh, we got another PUC person coming up. That's good. No, are you PUC? No, sir. You're with them. Oh, okay. You got off light today, man. Must be living right. Go ahead and state your name and who you're with.
Good afternoon, Chairman Perry, Vice Chair Hancock, and members. My name is Connie Corona. I'm the Executive Director of the Public Utility Commission. Thank you for having me this afternoon. The PUC's mission is to protect customers, foster competition, and promote high-quality infrastructure. Our water and wastewater responsibilities include setting rates for investor-owned utilities, issuing certificates of convenience and necessity, known as CCNs, and approving sales, transfers, or mergers of investor-owned utilities and water supply corporations. The PUC reviews rates for 382 utilities, ranging in size from major companies that serve tens of thousands of connections to small single proprietor companies who may serve fewer than 50. These smallest utilities are known as Class D. And although they serve only about 30,000 total connections, these Class D utilities represent over 300 separate entities under the PUC's jurisdiction. The PUC has a program to provide financial, managerial, and technical assistance to small and mid-sized utilities with meeting their regulatory requirements. In the last biennium, assistance was provided to 60 retail public utilities. We also have internal teams dedicated to helping both small utilities and customers navigate the regulatory process with the PUC. We work to keep the industry informed about the latest developments at the Commission and available resources at the Commission through regular communication, like our new Faucet Facts newsletter. Consolidation continues to drive much of the PUC's water-related work, especially for our legal and utility outreach divisions. When a utility is in desperate need of infrastructure improvements, customers can often get relief through an acquisition by a larger utility. Removing obstacles and streamlining proceedings is an effective way to improve the quality of water and sewer service for Texans. We appreciate that one of the committee's goals is to further facilitate that consolidation. Several pieces of legislation from the last few sessions have introduced efficiencies into the sale, transfer, and merger process. Known as an STM, this is the acquisition of one utility by another. Often, this means a small utility in need of assistance is being acquired by a larger utility that has the resources to make necessary improvements. For example, HB 1484 from the 87th session allows an acquiring utility to request to use one of its previously approved rates for the newly acquired utility. This authorization removes a common obstacle to acquiring the troubled utility. SB 1965 from the 88th session created an expedited STM process for situations in which the acquiring utility is also the temporary manager of the acquired utility. When Commissioner Jackson testified before this committee in September, there was some discussion about how the expedited process only applies to investor-owned utilities who are Class A or Class B, the larger investor owns. We appreciate that we've been able to work with Chairman Perry's office on proposed legislation to expand the applicability. The same expedited process should be available to a city, a utility district, a water supply corporation that has the same the necessary financial, managerial, and technical capabilities to acquire the troubled utility. And in some cases, the geography or access to particular funding dictates that one of those entity types is really the best suited for the acquisition. Next, HB 2373 from last session allows utilities to consolidate more than one system under a single tariff. This reduces customer confusion and allows for a simplified method of applying for a consolidated tariff. Apart from streamlining consolidation, SB 700 from the 86th session authorized an alternative rate-making methodology called the System Improvement Charge, or SIC. A SIC allows more timely recovery of certain costs through a rider between comprehensive rate cases. These costs are then thoroughly reviewed in the next rate case. When Commissioner Jackson testified in September, she discussed how these proceedings are extending well beyond the 120-day timeline in the PUC rules. Because these are intended to be streamlined proceedings, we appreciate that this committee included in its interim report a recommendation for the timeline to be statutorily limited to 60 days. The last thing I want to touch on is emergency preparedness. SB 3 from the 87th session required certain facilities to adopt emergency preparedness plans. The bill also specified how utilities can ensure continuous and adequate service during an extended power outage, such as by installing permanent backup generators. Utilities are also required to provide emergency information to electric service providers. The PUC continues to conduct outreach activities to ensure that the information about critical facility locations, critical load status, and emergency contact information are all up to date. Following Hurricane Beryl, the PUC contacted over a dozen water utilities to gather information about the storm's impacts and about emergency response. Most utilities reported having their own backup generation at critical facilities. However, backup generators were often shared across the utility system. One lesson learned is that utilities with permanently installed backup generation or enough mobile generators to cover all critical facilities tended to have the shortest service interruptions. Those findings, as well as others following our investigation after Hurricane Beryl, were included in the PUC's agency report that all of your offices received last month. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. And I think it's a good rehash of some of the things you deal with on a practical level. Members, they are responsible for rates, both electricity and, unfortunately, water. Water ends up, I've been told, as much as 80% of their personnel's time when just because the nature of water. So, but we're going to hopefully do some bills this session that'll expedite some of the ones that shouldn't be in front of them as much. But they do a great job, but they're mainly electricity, so we won't see them much. I'm working on some stuff with them, but any questions? Thank you for what you do. Appreciate it. We're looking to work with you on some of those efficiencies.
Yes, sir.
And help your world out. All right. Chair calls up TDA and TAHC.